What was your effort done helping others moment? Had a newish neighbor ask if he could borrow our lawnmower dart. Sure. Well, more or less every week he would come and get it out of our garage, use it to cut his grass, put it away without cleaning it or adding gas. In the fall we mentioned it was a good time to get deals on a new mower. He never talked to us again. My mother and her new husband had moved into a new place and invited all the kids over for Christmas. In previous years we would buy a whole turkey dinner from somewhere so no one, me, had to cook. So imagine my surprise when my husband and I walk in. My mother walks out of the kitchen, hands me a spoon and says, "Good, you're finally here," and goes to sit down in the living room. After a quick and awkward conversation, it was determined that my job was to make sure everything currently in progress, or not even started, got to the table on time, while everyone else socialized. Basically, I was the help and should have realized that. So any feelings I had about that were my fault. I was a good cook, and my mother taught me everything, not, so I owed her, so I did. And not knowing the family dynamics, my new step siblings were very thankful and appreciative of all my efforts, which caused a meltdown from my mother about how we all should be thanking her. That was the first time I used a phrase that has come in handy for these situations. I'm so sorry. It will never happen again. And it never did. They weren't happy when they finally realized what that meant. When a good friend of mine that I worked under had cancer and wasn't able to pay some bills, I loaned her $200 just to help. I was only 18 at the time and felt bad because she had kids. It was right around the holidays and I just wanted to help however I could and be a good person in life. She promised to pay me back when she could. Turns out she lied about having cancer, was stealing from the company I worked at, scammed my other co-workers, and would come in after calling out of work for her chemo to make fraudulent returns while I was overseeing the store by myself because of her calling out. Got that itch, fired and got promoted to her position after. I'm a teacher. A parent of a former student contacted me in an emergency situation, couldn't afford to pay bills, and needed help. She was super helpful to me in my first year teaching, so I asked friends and family to help out and raised her about $2,000. Never again. She has contacted me every few weeks since then, always with a new reason why she needs more money, and when I offer food and clothing resources, she refuses it. It has placed me in such an awkward situation and I regret ever trying to help her out in the first place. When I had a truck during college, everyone suddenly wanted me to help move them. Most were cool and gave me money or ordered pizza, unprompted BTW. One time however some dude I barely knew needed some help. I show up, and nothing is packed in his apartment. He had a giant fish tank and lived on the 3rd floor with no elevator. It was a ducking nightmare and I never got a dime nor food or even some beers. I never talked to him after that. I used to frequently stay late at work for clients who showed up to the veterinary clinic last minute with a non-emergency problem and no appointment. Then 3 times in a row, 3 different people were told up front about the after hours fee, agreed to pay it instead of scheduling an appointment for the next day, and all of them called back the next day fussing that they shouldn't have been charged extra for keeping us 30-60 minutes past our scheduled hours and that we were terrible and trying to scam them by charging for our time, even though we told them up front and they had another option. It was exhausting and demoralizing. We did more than we had to for them after already working a full day because a desire to help is why we're all here in the first place. And they responded by saying our time was worth nothing and we suck. The entire staff said duck that. Now, unless it's a literal life and death situation, if we can't fit someone in before closing and they didn't have an appointment, it's a firm no. I'm in this profession to help others and I still work late for real emergencies when they happen or if an appointment runs longer than expected. But I'm done sacrificing my personal time for entitled people who don't actually need it. Edited to clarify, the people didn't pay, but they were calling later to complain about it and demand a refund or say they were cancelling the transaction on their card. Instead of dealing with the headache anymore, we stopped giving non-emergency walk-ins the option of being seen after hours. No animals were harmed and the staff, and their families, are all much happier. Had a friend years ago who was a bit self-centered and prone to stretching the truth. But he was a nice enough guy with a rough backstory and my friend group liked him. So I cut him a lot of slack. I like to host and I have friends staying over pretty regularly. Back then, I usually had 1 or 2 people spending the night on any given day. Anyhow, over the span of a couple of years this guy starts abusing that, staying over for days or even weeks at a time, eating my food and drinking my liquor without contributing, that sort of thing, while constantly talking about his grand plans and daydreams as if they'd already happened. A little sad, but also pretty annoying after a while. Anyhow, I sit him down one day and let him know he's gotta head home, and that he's free to come over and hang out, but I'm not comfortable with him staying over for the time being. He leaves. I think it went remarkably well and head out to work. And it turns out that he broke in while I was away at work and stole a bunch of my sister's things because his birthday was coming up and neither of us even thought to get him a gift. It takes a special person to rationalize how burglarizing someone is really their fault. Anyway, all slack and sympathy went out the window immediately. Called the cops and he's dead to me. After working free of charge as a freelance graphics guy to build my portfolio up, and having a client basically make the most minor of adjustments and constant revisions, 4 posters which should have taken me a day tops ended up taking 3 months. And when they wanted poster X4, I wanted money. Ghosted. Lesson learnt. We have helped out my sister-in-law a few times with money bills. Never a lot. $50 here, $100 there, usually for some bill to avoid services being cut off. I'm usually the more heartfelt one in my marriage, but I ended up being the one to put my foot down. Went over to her apartment once. She had 2 big flat screen TVs, new couch, new fridge, kids on PlayStation or whatever console she got them. It was all rent-a-center stuff. But that was the end for me. I didn't have any of those things myself. Not to mention the incredibly bad financial decision those things were with the high interest rate. Part of me felt like I was taking food out of her kids' mouths, but realized that no, her poor decisions was doing that. Edit. Wow. Thanks for all the support and awards. The situation, on both sides, is way more complicated than I can put into just a couple paragraphs, as you can imagine. I want to help others and still do, but it is hard to keep supporting those that refuse to make any attempts to help themselves. I mentioned below she has started to do things differently. We've since lent her money again and she has always paid us back when she said she would. She still has a long way to go and a lot of challenges ahead of her, but we love her and will support her efforts as best we can. The day I realized that no one wanted to help me in return. Look, it's not about doing something for someone to get something back, and I will always help whoever I can that needs it. But when the same people consistently ask for help or money or what have you, without actually wanting to help you when you need it, or just hang out or be friendly in general, it's a huge red flag. I have neighbors across the road who we extended ourselves to help out because they had young kids and seemed to be struggling. Well, they were really starting to take advantage to the point where we couldn't walk out of our house without them literally yelling for us because they needed a phone, a ladder, money, someone to drive them somewhere, diapers, a Wi-Fi password, a wood, etc, etc. This started happening every day and multiple times a day. It became ridiculous and oppressive. They have since pulled at it with everyone else on our road, wearing out one generous person after the other. Once you realize people are merely moochers and are content to remain so, that's when you're done. Edit. Thanks for the awards. One day I found a puppy, dirty, hungry, and just scared and lost. I gave him a good meal and some love, and went to drop him off at the address on his collar. The dude thanked me, then proceeded to beat the crap out of the dog, telling me to mind my own business when I tried to get him to stop. Carried him by his collar to a 5-foot short chain in a muddy patch with a crappy broken 3-wall doghouse where I'm guessing the dog spent 100% of its time. I called the cops, but they did nothing. The dog technically had shelter, which qualifies BC 3 walls and a roof, even if it was filled with holes, and it gets 20 at night here. P.S. I stole the dog 3 weeks later. We were asleep one night with window open. We wake up, BC, there is a couple walking down the road arguing. The girl is closer than the guy. Next thing we know, the girl is banging on door begging to come in. We call police. They get there and couple gone. They tell us that's a common ruse being used in area to get you to open doors so they can rob you. Was donating baby toddler clothes to a mom in need through one of those Facebook donating pages. She didn't have a car. I did, so I drove 30 minutes away to deliver the stuff all for free. Got in a bad accident less than 5 blocks from her house. So I texted her to see if she could come get what she was able to because my car was totaled. She wouldn't walk the 4 blocks, then reported me to the group and got me kicked out for not following through. I ended up with a fractured sternum. Yeah, duck that it. Never again. When I dropped my rate significantly to help a struggling family with childcare. Blended family needing to find childcare for 3 emotionally damaged children who had been hospitalized by mum's boyfriend. Both parents worked and my wages were paid through a charity scheme. It was hell. They were utterly useless as people, let alone parents. They took the piss and ended up basically doing nothing with the house or children and ended up owing me nearly 2k due to them committing benefit fraud and pocketing what they should have been passing on to me. The final straw was when they asked me to babysit at night as they needed to go out on the lash. It's been stressful whilst telling me they couldn't afford food, let alone pay me. Never again will I fall for a sob story. When someone just spat some gum on my hand when I tried to help them up. And to this day screw them. Edit. How did I get these upvotes? Why do I have these upvotes? What is life now? Me and my GF were leaving a McDonald's and pulling up to the stoplight. There's this homeless old man that we've seen around the area ever since we moved here, and my GF decides, since we've never given anything to this guy and he's always there, we should give him one of our McDoubles. He comes up to the car, says thank you, and walks back to his corner as the light turns green and just tosses it on the road right in front of where we're driving. This is more specific to the teeny tiny town I used to live in. Used to believe I was valued by the community. Used to actually believe in that community spirit. That soul, if you will. I had seen it and participated in it. When I left my marriage of almost 13 years, there had been about 10 years of domestic violence. I well and truly thought the community would help me out if I needed it and reached out, as I had seen so many other times in the 15 years I had lived there. Nope. Got quite the opposite. Nobody believed me. People who I thought were friends disappeared. People who I thought were friends played the side wasn't really that bad was it card. People that I thought I could trust to help keep me safe by not tell anyone where I was living went straight to my abuser with that info. Hardly anyone would even speak to me, even just to say hi, when I needed acknowledgement most. Duck all of those ducks. When I rushed to another state about 2,000 miles away to help my sister because of a medical issue, and for whatever reason she decided to have her neighbor help her instead, without letting me know. It was 3 months ago and she is fine but still has not contacted me. That was the end for me. I was in school. No one was paying attention to what I was saying. I just did my work silently, turned it in, and watched as the rest of my table group went up in flames. Had a new manager come into my former place of employment. Immediately this new manager starts firing people for bullet reasons and hiring people from her old job to replace them. The walls in that place talked, and few noticed the janitor. So when I heard rumors of the next heads on the chopping block, one of which was mine, I decided to be nice and help out the other two. I considered them good friends, and it was the least I could do, right? I won one, and he takes it seriously and begins looking for another job. So when the pink slip arrived, he landed on his feet running. The other promptly goes squealing to the manager in question, who uses that as an excuse to fire me, and then fires the person that had squealed. All 3 jobs were quickly filled by her old friends from her previous job. I've refused to lift a finger to help a co-worker out since. I've had advanced warnings of firing and disciplinary hearings and various other juicy gossip. People for some reason think I hear with my eyes and assume that they can talk in front of me and I won't notice. I'm going blind. People are deaf, but I've kept it all to myself. Duck em. Last 2 times I've helped push someone out of mud snow in the winter, they've slammed the gas pedal down, coated me in mud, and as soon as they were free of the mud just kept driving without so much as a thank you. I've stopped helping people stuck in the mud snow. Edit. Since people keep saying how it could be okay, here is my examples. In my particular situations we're talking about being stuck in like 2 inches of snow muck on the shoulder in an empty area. Both times the road was clear 10 feet from where they managed to get a wheel stuck. This was a spot people would get stuck turning around. So really no excuse other than they were D's. I can understand the side of a busy highway or something like that. Mine was definitely not that case though. Worked in Baton Rouge for a decade, 1999 to 2009, and would regularly give the homeless I saw around town, generously if I can say that without being a douchebag. In 2008 I was on a run for work and a guy caught me near the Target on Segan Lane. He had nothing, he was homeless and on top of it had been robbed an hour ago. No worries. Empty my wallet for the man. We all need help. Coming out of the shopping complex I see him hiding in the bushes opening a pack of smokes on a laptop while on his iPhone. Then a month later, saw a man I regularly donated to on Government Street. I would catch him on weekends, but this weekend my drop-offs started early so I saw him as he arrived in downtown BR. I sat behind the TV station waiting for a pickup, and this cat gets out of a new car, changes into dirty clothes and grabs his sign from the trunk and heads off to his corner. I have given food and connected people with charities, but I have not given a penny to a beggar since then. Not me but my parents. My cousin moved in with us for 2 years when I was a kid. She's 18 years older than me. She ended up being a drug addict that smoked in the house, stole money, couldn't hold down a job, and mercilessly picked on my sister and I until the day she got kicked out. That was almost 30 years ago. To this day my parents refuse to let anyone move in because they just need a place to stay until they're back on their feet. I was 17 and still in school. The corridors were empty as my teacher sent me out to go do her a job. So I was just walking down the corridor when this girl carrying a bunch of books bumped into me and she dropped the books, like you see in a movie. So I apologize because I wasn't really paying attention and I bend down and get the books for her and hand them to her expecting at least a small thanks. But no. Instead this chick had to say I have a boyfriend so never ever purposely bump into me just so I can talk to you. You should have walked away. As she begins to turn away I grab her shoulder which makes her turn around and I knock the books out of her hand and say now that was on purpose and I walked away whilst she was stood there speechless. Some of you may think that was messed up but I don't really regret a single bit of it as she got what she deserved. I was 16. Only had 10 euros with me. Homeless lady begging for money. I tell her I won't give her money. Went to the local supermarket. Bought 2 packs of milk, some bread, some cookies, a bottle of juice and some cooked chicken. Went and gave it to her, with all kindness. 1 hour later I pass by the same street, and everything is on the floor thrown away, not even eaten or open. Met a guy who had hit a rough patch. We had great chemistry and he made me laugh. Ugh, the bar was so low. He gave me a sob story of why he was getting kicked out of his communal house and I offered to let him stay with me because I live alone and have my own place. Huge mistake. He hadn't hit a rough patch. He was the rough patch. Barely paid for anything and would get wasted while I was at work and be a total asshole when I got home. Got fired from his job. Ate all the food I'd buy and make excuses as to why he hadn't found another job yet. The absolute kicker was when I went home for my Donna's funeral. He treated it like a mini vacation in my place. Invited friends over. Played music so loud the cops got called and when he was supposed to pick me up from the airport, he was wasted at someone's house at 8 AM. Never felt better than the day I kicked him out. No more financial and emotional abuse. Finally felt like my place was mine again. I've learned an expensive lesson. Don't help people that won't help themselves. When nothing is their fault, there's a serious issue. Run fast and far. I'm a nice person. I look after people. Colleague is sick. I go out and buy cough medicine or paracetamol for them. Got no food? He'll get you a takeaway. I never expected anything in return but one day I was asked for money. I did. Not Allet. It was like a Q20. And they eventually gave it back. Then they asked again. And again. Never wanted food. Or a train ticket. Just money. Then the last time I lent them money he walked straight into a betting shop and put money on a football game. That was it. He asked me for more money some time later and I said no. Guy literally throws a tantrum. I'd always help you out. I give it back. I thought we were mates. I don't fund gambling addictions. And haven't given him or anyone else help again. Just looking after me now. I was pretty down on my luck. Quit my job and started touring in a band. Just getting started, so money wasn't great. One night a 50-ish-year-old dude stops me at the entrance to the grocery store. I had enough for a cheap 6-pack, toilet paper, and cat food. He gives me a story about how he's stranded overnight and just needed some food before he could get back on the road. So I go in and figure out how to get the guy some dinner, some chicken gingers, macaroni salad, and some dinner rolls. Skip my beer, get cat food, and TP. Take the guy his food. Go to my van and start digging for change. If I can't get beer, I'll at least get a candy bar. Go back in and the ducker is buying a 12 of Keystone. I raised hell at him. Just berated the guy out the door, making sure everyone knew why. Duck you, man. I had a live on-site summer job where I became good friends with this hippie couple in their later 20s. When the job in summer ended, I had to go back to college and move into my new apartment with 2 roommates. Arranged at the end of last semester. The couple needed a place to stay and I let them crash for a couple days. 2 months later I was the arsehole that had pissed off my roommates and had to toss the hippies. Too bad. We were really good friends and the overstaying their welcome had really spoiled it. Alright, my time to shine. Had a friend, call him Mark, who was going through a breakup and needed a place to stay for a couple weeks while he landed a new apartment. I just bought a place with enough room, so sure. What the hell? Honestly, just happy to see him getting out of the toxic relationship. So whatever I can do. The lease is running out for them. He just wants to spend the last week searching up a new spot instead of fighting. I sympathize. Crash here. Well, they worked it out. Or decided to keep trying. The lease is still running out though. So can they both stay here those 2 weeks while they search? They'll keep to my spare room. They say. Only bring the minimum of things they need. They say. Won't even know they're there. They say. Hoo boy. These are now red flag phrases for me forevermore. Of course I'm also going to help them move. Mark works long hours and the girlfriend, Laura, can't drive. So I'll head to their old place after work on moving day. Help load up the truck and then drive it to storage. You know, all those non-essentials they won't be bringing to my place. Mark will get home by the time I'm back. Movers will show up for the heaviest stuff. We'll get them into my place and it's a done deal. Holy it, I was so naive. I get there on time. Laura is just getting out of a long bath because she really wanted to soak up the apartment on her last day there. Nothing is packed. She's puttering around in a robe, lazily and haphazardly tossing things into boxes at random. The clock is ticking on the movers, the truck rental, and the hours at the storage place. So what can I do but help get it into boxes? Laura directs me on generally where said it goes. It's not until Mark gets home that I realize how badly this is going. Remember all the stuff that's supposed to be going into storage and not my home? It's boxed up with the essentials. The stuff going to my home. So now 90% of their stuff has to come with and they'll sort it out into storage ASAP. Just like 2 weeks. This is a phrase that actually stands for whenever. Hours of moving later. I got them started getting things inside my place and left to meet an out of town friend. Had anything been done according to plan, we would have been done by that time anyway. And this was already an abuse of my generous nature. So I wasn't going to skip this social occasion. I found out later they were moving in until 3 AM. Fast forward, my friend staying for 2 weeks has turned into my friend, his abusive girlfriend, and their dog staying for 3 weeks. Then 4, with no apparent end in sight, because they are applying for certain kinds of housing and the approvals keep falling through. Fed up, I finally said as politely as possible, here is your move out date. If you're not approved the week before this, figure out plan B because I need my house. Well, the week of reckoning finally arrives, and Laura tells me they're waiting on final approval, and that she could finally get in the last of the paperwork. Now that I had brought her some envelopes from my office to send in the forms with, and that it should be resolved in 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks. So I said, bummer. Where you going to live for the week in between? She did not take this well, pouted, Waited to get Mark alone to tell him how offended she was and instruct him to tell me to apologize to her, which I laughed at and refused. She then started a text-based tirade against me for throwing them out, being a friend. Sorry we needed help, woe is me, etc. This spun up into a full narcissist meltdown over a few hours and crossed more lines than I care to remember, as she accused me of being every kind of itty character you can name. They moved out the next day and I changed the locks that night. Moved in with her dad for the interim, which it turns out was an option all along. Just not as cushy for Laura's ego as squatting at mine. Sometime in week 5 we all agreed that with this dragging on as long as it did, I needed some rent from them for the second month. Never saw a dime. When they broke up for good a couple months after, Mark had the balls to call me up, try to insist on a face-to-face meeting to brainstorm places for him to stay. Duck no. Mark, hundreds of dollars and at least one apology in the hole already, and I can't trust you not to wedge into my house long term anyway. Last time I'll ever have roommates. Last time I'll ignore my gut feeling to be generous to a fault. 2. Edit. Hey, thanks for the silver, friend. It's all worthwhile now. In freshman year of college, my friend of about 2 years got kicked out of his parents' house. He said he needed somewhere to stay for the night till his parents cooled off. I said you can stay a week if you want, but more than that and you'll need to pay me rent. He made pretty good money, more than me even. I was kind of hoping to find someone to split the bills with anyway. A week rolls by and he hasn't even looked for another place. His parents aren't letting him come back. I ask him if he's going to stay. He says if it's alright with you, I say sure. Just pay me half the cost of the app every month. He said he can't. I know damn well he can. I say well then you gotta go. He asked if he could stay another week. I said no. He got pissed at me for that. I then got pissed at him for getting pissed at me. I gave you a place to stay and you are mad at me? Totally ended the friendship. Never let anyone into your place unless you have a signed contract. I was working at a fast food place when I was a student. I usually did overtime to help everyone clean up and close the restaurant until about 1 AM because we were so understaffed. I guess people got used to me staying late because one night when I was supposed to finish at 11, I overheard some of my colleagues, the stereotypical mean girls, say how bad the clients had cluttered everything tonight and how it was going to be a mess to clean up. Then they say, but hey, me is gonna stay late tonight again. Let's leave it to her. She always does the cleaning anyways. Followed by laughing and summiting about me. That night I clocked out at 11 after doing all of my tasks at the counter and left. The girls stared at me in shock, and when I was outside I saw one of them standing in the middle of the restaurant with her hand on her forehead, looking at the mess she would have to clean before going home. Weirdly, after that day, they started cleaning earlier without waiting for me to do everything. I often donate to causes I feel strongly about and still do to this day. Now typically it may not be a ton of money, $20 a month as an example, but my rule is, if they contact you for more money you're likely going to have to discontinue. One group called me and basically belittled the amount of money I was giving, saying they really need people who are contributing $100 a month or more, or large one-time donations. I immediately told them to stop any further payments from autopay and to stop contacting me. It makes me reconsider charitable giving altogether. I wouldn't say I'm done helping others, but I changed the way that I do it. A homeless man asked me if I would buy him something from the store. I did it. Then he tried to trick me into buying more. His scamming strategy was pretty clever and I can see how people fall for it, but I caught on, thankfully. Now I focus on broad community initiatives, and if I do give someone something, it's only in situations where I know I am 100% safe and can leave immediately. Mine was in college. I was the only one in the group with a car, so everyone hit me up for rides. It would get a bit annoying since I was the only one also with a job, so sometimes I'd get asked if I could give them a ride to the airport or bus. One time a friend calls me up at like 12 PM or so and asked if I can give her a ride to the bus terminal at like 1 AM. I was like sure. So on the way she tells me that she was going to stay the weekend but got annoyed with her sister, so she was leaving to her hometown. She had asked her sister for a ride to the bus terminal even though her sister had been drinking at home. Her sister was drunk and she still took her. They made it halfway when she got pulled over and arrested for DUI. Well, my friend called a buddy to help her drive the car home and then she hit me up for a ride to the bus station. She told me all of this on the way there and all I could think of was, so you asked your drunk sister for a ride when she was already home, she got arrested, and now you are leaving her here without even lifting a finger to take her out? Long story short, I bailed out the sister. I told myself after that no one would have done that for me. They would have left me there, so I stopped giving people rides and slowly but surely my number of friends decreased drastically. I crashed my car covering a co-worker's shift. They needed help because they couldn't find a sitter and I get guilted into covering all the time. That wasn't the time. My moment was a month later, after I finally saved up enough for a new car. It was stolen outside of my work when I was covering a co-worker's shift. When I needed help or my shifts covered. Oh sorry, I'm busy, I can't.